Every time I do this, I want to revert to Holy School days and say, this is a reading from the Gospel of St. John. This is better. People have this idea that God is never humorous, cannot laugh, and that everybody has to act very sacred around the divine. I wish you would all lighten up a bit. All of you. Laugh at yourself. Someone once said, you grow up the day you have a good laugh at yourself. I believe that was Emma Bombeck. Don't take yourself so seriously. Give yourself a little slack, and while you're at it, give each other a little too. Joy comes before anything else. It is what makes everything possible. Without joy, there is nothing. I'm saying that unless you get a little humor in your life, none of it is going to make any sense. I'm saying that laughter is the best medicine. I'm saying that joy is good for the soul. I'll go further than that. Joy is the soul. The soul is just what you would call joy, pure joy, endless joy, unadulterated, unlimited, unrestricted joy. That is the nature of the soul. A smile is a window to your soul. Laughter is the door.
Thank you, Jeff. I do appreciate the opportunity to share with you my thoughts and feelings a lot about God, or whatever we might call him, right on Freeman. So thank you. And of course we get, I don't want to say assigned, that's the word that comes to me each month. Judy sends us a theme for the month, and this one was about delight. So it's always interesting for me to then give it some thought and then create a message for you, which I'm always pleased to do. So when I looked up even just a definition of delight, what stood out was pleasure, happiness, joy, what you take great pleasure in. And then the opposite was displeased. And it made me think so much about my work and how I tried to teach people about a will to live and doing much more of what they really want to do and much less, actually, of what they don't want to do, to create a much better balance in their lives between doing what fills their heart versus what everybody else kind of thinks you should be doing. And so it's interesting in the Allison, when you talked about the weeding can wait, I really want to say that again for you. The weeding can wait. In terms of, again, you've got to create this balance, my opinion, but based on a lot of work and research, there really has got to be a much better balance. And then as Jeff just read for us, the importance of joy. And joy truly is your soul. If there's a feeling you could attach to God, it would really be this feeling of joy. And crickets. And even, Annika, your comment about I wouldn't be anywhere else. So many things you said. You noticed I was writing all through the service. Some of the things you said were so meaningful and I thought would fit in very well with at least what I thought to say today. And then I couldn't not think about Joseph Campbell. I'm pretty sure very few of you would have not heard about the idea of follow your bliss. And Dr. Campbell was perhaps the world's foremost authority on myths and parables and fairy tales. And one of the most dominant underlying messages throughout history was this idea of follow your bliss. And I don't think that was a skewed message. I believe that there is real wisdom in doing this. So here's a quote from Joseph Campbell. And I would say following your bliss is a matter of identifying that purest, that pursuit, I can't even remember any, that pursuit which you are truly passionate about, and attempting to give yourself absolutely to it. In so doing, you will find your fullest potential and serve your community to the greatest possible extent. And that came from his book, The Power of Myth, which came from the conversations with Bill Moyers, which I'm assuming, again, many of you are already quite familiar with when it came out on PBS. So then, of course, I always review my Conversations with God books, or in this case, Friendship with God. There are numbers in this series. And it made me think about, I guess, a lot of my work as well, but it's so well reinforced, like in Jeff's reading. Again, thank you, Jeff. And so I wrote for the summary of what I would talk about when I send that into Sally and Judy. So what brings you pleasure, happiness, and joy? What are you truly passionate about? What makes you smile and laugh? These are the nature, window, and door to your soul. And so when I worked at these cancer centers and would say as one of their doctors that we need you to have fun as part of your treatment, I'm sure for most people they thought that was really a bit bizarre. You can't be serious. When I've just learned more and more that the truth of when you feel better, it's like the common sense saying, when you're busy doing what you like to do, you tend to forget your aches and pains. So that's what I found when I would teach or work with these patients and their families, was to say, just give them a dose of common sense. And even joke in science, we don't use common sense. The idea is that it's got to be supported with really well done objective research. But in that process, I really do think we forget some good common sense. And that really, again, people know that when you are busy doing what you like to do, you really do feel better. And to the extreme even that if you really thought about this and you thought about your partner, for example, you would recognize perhaps more in your partner that when they've just done something they really love to do, they're really nicer to be with. They're nicer to work with. See, Pam and Jay get it. But there's real truth in this. Good. So the idea is, in my mind, I picture Pam kicking Jay in the butt and get out there and go have some more fun. Do you understand the logic of that? Skip the weeding. Oh, forgive me, I know that weeding needs done. I've got a big yard and we've had big gardens and that's just part of it. But if you have a real choice and it isn't that urgent, go fishing. Pardon me? Kayaking. That's it, you get it. That is, so what is it that brings you great joy and meaning? In fact, you have a kayaking event coming up, don't you? Oh, it was last week? Okay. Well, anyhow, I love that you do your hiking and the joy you and your group get from doing such a thing. Anyhow, so many thoughts go through my head when I'm preparing these talks and then even reviewing what I'd noted. And many years ago, when I was living in Northern California, when we first moved from the east to west, I met another psychologist who became a very good friend, and we would trade. That is, she would have a session with me as such, which is about going within and asking your soul for a term. Okay, what is it you really need to do to heal or be happier and healthier? And so when she did that for me and asked me, so what would be ideal for you if you could have everything exactly the way you wanted it? And so not only thinking about it, but coming from within, I remember coming up with no rules. That felt so right to me. No rules. That I could be absolutely free to be me. No criticism, not even self-criticism. No judgment. I could just be me. And then I got to thinking about a lot of what I observe going on right now. I'm not an astrologer. I know very little about it, but I respect it. So for someone who may be much more knowledgeable in the room, since I saw so many changes going on at this time, especially with people moving out and moving in, even my brother just rather spontaneously sold his house within a week, sold his house. He'd already bought a house just the week prior. But there's these big changes, and I got to thinking about what that might mean, so I even just Googled it. I put in astrology and the idea of new beginnings. And lo and behold, guess what's going on at this time? According to at least what I found online. It is a time for new beginnings. And I want to tie it into pride as well. I didn't realize when I first started preparing this talk that, now in y'all huts it's this weekend, it's always the first weekend in June, but it is in fact a full month. Different cities and places celebrate it at different times throughout the month. So I wear this with great pride, both to acknowledge those in a gay community, and in any way have to justify or defend their life and that lifestyle. And to think about, this is just personal for me, Sally, but the idea that your city has to really take this giant leap, and I know that's true, but why should we have to do that? Why should you be other than who the hell you are? So I have so many gay friends, and especially in yachts with a rather large lesbian community. And so this past week I was with one and talking to her, and I asked her, what was it like coming out? What did that feel like? And I wasn't expecting what she said to me. She said, what was most important is to acknowledge who I really am. And again, I come back to that freedom of being you, being whatever you are, uniquely you. What arrogance to think that anyone knows better than you who and what you should be. You know, I joke honestly, if you think about, and I've done this with you before, so whatever the subject might be, I said, when will the day come you know everything there is to know about that subject? I don't care what it is. Right. So then the arrogance to think that you know what's really right for someone else. My opinion, you don't even know what's right for you. But you're going to tell somebody else how to be. So I just made some notes about living authentically and delight in celebrating who you are. So along with this free to be me, I don't know if you can think back to 1972 and Marlo Thomas. Do you remember that? If not for yourself, but for children. What a message. Now, I didn't know so much back then yet, honestly. I didn't really think about a lot of what I love to share with you. But I remember, how much cooler a message does that get? This idea of free to be me. And the idea of gender neutrality and individuality and tolerance. And gender stereotypes. I thought it was so addressed beautifully in that message. And then I got to thinking also about the idea of you are perfect, who you are. Even remember Mr. Rogers? Again, talk about someone just, God just landed right in our laps to help us make good sense of stuff. So here's what even Mr. Rogers had to say at some point. It's you I like. It's not the things you wear. It's not the way you do your hair. But it's you I like. The way you are right now. The way down deep inside you. Not the things that hide you. Not your toys. They're just beside you. But it's you I like. Every part of you. Your skin, your eyes, your feelings, whether old or new. I hope that you'll remember, even when you're feeling blue, that it's you I like. It's you yourself. It's you I like. So, just another one of my notes. How many of you are familiar with the queer eye Netflix series. Oh, good, a lot of you. And it's just one of those things that, and even with all my training and understanding, how do these guys pull that off? The transformation of people's lives who you go, there is no way these people are going to change or whatever. But I just thought again, of all, they're as gay as can be. And they celebrate it in every moment, and invariably, in the transformation of the people they work with, there's this genuine respect for just people who care about them and took this time to try to help them. So if you're not familiar with Queer Eye, and you can get Netflix, I really recommend you check that out. I pretty much guarantee you will be uplifted to see what can happen when people care. And then, let's see, I made another note here. Oh, and you know how my intuition works with songs or phrases from songs? So all week I got a Diana Ross song. And it just happens to be called I'm Coming Out. If I could sing, I would sing it for you. Maybe then you would resonate more with this song. But I wrote the notes down. I'm coming out. I want the world to know. Got to let it show. I'm coming out. Got to let it show. There's a new me coming out. And I just have to live, and I want to give. I'm completely positive. I think this time around I'm going to do it. Like you never knew it. Oh, I'll make it through. The time has come for me to break out of the shell. I have to shout. I'm coming out. I've got to show the world all that I want to be and all my abilities. There's so much more to me. Somehow I'll have to make them just understand. I got it well in hand. And oh, how I've planned. I'm spreading love. There is no need to fear. And I just feel so good. Every time I hear, I'm coming out. I want the world to know, got to let it show, I'm coming out. I want the world to know, got to let it show. So along with this idea of really celebrating life and living fully is the idea to really step into it. Not just when I think of new beginnings, like I was talking to you about relative astrology and so many people making major changes in their life, is I'd really like to have you think about this as a new opportunity, a time for new beginnings, so that if you're feeling a little burdened with the weeds, as Dr. Shrock says, go fishing. And I used to say to the people I work with, and if your husband gets upset with you, you say, you have him call me. Because that was, again, people had to defend that now they were going to take more time to do what they really want to do instead of what somebody else thinks they should do. So then I made a note about, life can really seem unfair. And God bless Yannick and others today talking about these very, very serious times in our lives when just life stinks. I know I've shared that with you before too. I honestly got to tell my patients that. Life stinks. They didn't come to see me when things were going great. And you can only imagine the stories I've heard. But for what it's worth, because we do tend to think life is really quite unfair at times, is I learned to tell this little story. I'm not sure where I heard it or learned it, but imagine that you could put all of your troubles in a plain brown paper bag. And let's say we all had this big table, we were sitting around, and so now you place your plain brown paper bag of troubles in the middle of the table. And then we switch them all around, so now you don't even know whose bag is whose, right? And now you had to pick one. I'm telling you, you would be glad to get your bag back. We always think life is greener on the other side kind of stuff. And to know that life is difficult. And I don't want to take from the real grieving that is important and real. And we need to honor that. But in perspective, this really grand idea that, and maybe the greatest thing that I think we could ever attempt to accomplish or be grateful for is to learn to trust. to trust in a bigger picture, however you understand God or whatever term you call it, that the universe is absolutely 100% benevolent. And somehow, some way, this idea of how do we make sense of suffering, that's a very personal journey. But I can tell you from my heart, from my head, that somehow it all fits, it all makes sense. And so whether it's about coming out or doing more of what you really want to do, be more of who you really want to be, is coming to terms with this fact, as far as I can determine, and what has been the consensus belief of every religion and philosophic system, every major one. You are God. Get a hold of that one. How much cooler does it get? So somehow through all of this and all that we've learned about what's right and wrong, what's appropriate and inappropriate, I wrote down all of these biases we've learned. Biases based on class, gender, sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, nationality, religious beliefs, age, disability. These are real, and so we learn these, I think, very unhealthy and inappropriate attitudes and stereotypes about what's okay and what isn't okay. So who wants to be the Archie Bunker in the group? Or better yet, I'd like one of you to volunteer your phone number for me. I don't need your name, just your phone number. And the next time anyone's not quite sure what to do or how to be, we'll call you. The reason I don't need your name, we'll just call you Mr. and Mrs. Know-It-All. Lighten up. So that's really an important message here about this idea of lighten up. So I always end up with more notes, so I wanted to read you some things, but I'm not sure I have enough time properly to do that. But however you can, become more comfortable with who you really are. I'll tell you something that I remember too, and I'll kind of end with this soon. Remember when we were graduating from high school, and we all had our high school graduation photos, or we had our yearbooks, and we would sign everybody's photo, or in the yearbook, right? I want to tell you something that I found written. Never wish to be anything but who you are, and be that most perfectly. That's what I wrote on everyone's picture. I can't believe to this day, like, who the hell did you think you were to write something like that on their picture? So there's a part of me that has known for a long time that, and if you're really feeling this, I'm telling you, this idea is if someone's going to try to tell you who to be and how to be, does not work. And coming to terms with that, we came here as a child of God, however you want to say that. And does God make mistakes? So just this morning when I was meditating, I got another song. And I wish again I could sing it. It might make more sense to you right away. But the line goes, just remember when you're home again, you belong to me. And so for all of us, whatever we're dealing with, and I know some of it stinks, is somehow if we can keep perspective through this, grieve, express our emotions genuinely, authentically, but remember that we're all pretty doggone special. And then one last thing you were going to remind me is meditation classes this Tuesday. It's free, it's on Zoom, 5:15, always the first Tuesday of the month. So the link is always in the announcements for anything FOOF does. But I hope you will join me where we can talk more about anything at all and then connect with our own intuition also as a way to come to understand something more fully with another perspective. And I read where Sally said because of your meeting, we're not going to have my little gathering afterwards, but I will be in the cafe if you want to talk further about this or anything else before I get to go home. And 1:30 at Yachts is the Pride Puppy Parade.